Welcome back to Regional Championship 8 here at Sydney, Australia. I'm Jim Dowling. I'm joined by Kwang Wu.
Hello. Good to be back. We have an exciting matchup for this round. We have Dimir Tempo versus the Boogeyman deck, Grinding Breach.
Yeah, so let's see what we've got down at the table. We've got Nathan Basser on the right playing Grinding Breach and Jinhao Yang on the left playing Dimir Tempo. We've had a Dimir deck on stream already so far today. Esper, actually, I believe it was.
Yep.
But they're going to share a lot of moving parts.
Most definitely, yeah. It's a tempo deck that utilizes Psychic Frog, and then they'll have a different finisher. I believe this one might have Esper or the Abhorrent Oculus. And then on the right, Nathan is on, I guess, our Boogeyman deck for the weekend. Team of Breach, the combo deck that utilizes Underworld Breach, Grinding Station, and then those 0-mana Moxen.
Yeah, we've been talking about this deck, but we haven't actually managed to see it all day. So finally getting its chance to shine. But it's possible that we'll be seeing this a little bit over the next few rounds.
Certainly expect to. I definitely saw a few in the room as I was walking around earlier.
Yep. So the players have consulted each other's deck lists, of course being an open deck list tournament. Shuffling, presenting, die roll, and we'll be off to the races soon. So 155 players here today, and the most prolific deck in the room is this Grinding Breach deck.
Yeah, so only one on everyone's watch list per se. I think the unbanning of Moxo has really unlocked the deck. The deck was already quite good before the unbanning, and then the unban has really put it a bit over the top. So it's definitely one to expect when you're playing in an event like this.
I'm actually surprised that the list doesn't play Faithless Looting, another key unbanned card recently.
Yeah, definitely. I think they've just got too many powerful cards. All their cards generate a lot of advantage, and I guess it couldn't fit in the list. I think a lot of the deck guides all say that they have a lot of powerful synergistic cards, and I guess it just didn't make the cut, which is surprising to myself as well.
Looks like both players here taking a mulligan to 6. Jinhao perhaps fixing up some of his deck that may be upside down from the previous game. Some things that only happen in paper. You don't really see these problems in Arena or on Magic Online.
No, definitely not. And I guess you got to be pretty handy with that as well.
All right. And then on the Dimir side, you mentioned sort of leaning on Psychic Frog.
Yeah.
It looks like this deck might be a touch faster than the last one we saw on stream, having access to cards like Thought Scour to accelerate out the graveyard.
Most definitely, and Psychic Frog will utilize that other ability to discard a card, and I think he'll aim to discard Abhorrent Oculus and try and unearth that as quickly as possible. So a bit of a dual threat there, and definitely can put a lot of pressure on Nathan, I guess, fairly early and back it up with some counter spells.
All right, players looking to draw their 6. We'll see if we can sneak a peek here at what they're working with. Looks like Nathan happy with his. I think I saw a split card in hand there or something like that.
Potentially.
All right, Nathan confirming keeping a 6 and Jinhao also keeping this 6. All right, let's get started. We have Nathan Basser on the bottom of the screen here, starting off with a Scalding Tarn, fetching Shocking straight away, getting the best mana that you can on turn 1.
Yeah, look out for this deck. This deck has some very explosive starts, given that there's a lot of 0-mana artifacts like, Mishra's Bauble, Mox Amber, and Mox Opal. So they can power out an Emery on turn 1, although it looks like it'll be a Tamiyo for Nathan.
Tamiyo, every time I see Tamiyo, I am surprised by it, but I don't know why. It's always just good. It's never the best thing you can be doing, but it's always there and it's always contributing to your plan.
Yeah, it's certainly very strong in this deck. It's synergized by attacking and making those clues that power up the other artifact synergy. And this deck has the ability to draw a lot of cards as well through Mishra's Bauble, through the clue itself, and some other draw effects. So it's able to flip quite quickly.
Yeah, and this Tamiyo on the backside, it's got, it stems the flow of attacks as well as being able to return key instants and sorceries from your graveyard. And, it could make you some mana, especially in this deck.
Yeah, definitely. It's a very strong card, and it's able to bring back Malevolent Rumble, one of the key cards, I guess, in Modern Horizons 3, one that was potentially underrated when it first came out, but it's a really strong card because it brings back any permanent in the top 4. So, especially with sideboards, you can look, for, I guess, a combo piece in the main deck or a sideboard card as well, and find that, and find the Eldrazi spawn that can block as well and make mana. It's a very powerful card, definitely one that maybe flew under the radar initially.
True. So we see Jinhao with a turn 1 fetch land passing. Nathan on his second turn here attacking with a Tamiyo, playing an Urza's Saga as the land for turn, and an Emry, Lurker of the Lock. Milled over, Urza's Saga, Mox Opal, Grinding Station.
Yeah, some of those key combo cards. So Grinding Station is I suppose, one of the key cogs of this deck that with Underworld Breach and a 0-mana artifact can mill almost essentially your entire deck, and you're looking for a win con. It looks like Nathan's opted for Thassa's Oracle, so when your deck's empty, you win the game instantly. And Jinhao will have to have some counters for that.
I think Jinhao fetched a Shockland.
Yes, I think that's the alternate art water grave. There's a few new old arts, but I think that's the Ravnica Allegiance full art one. So
I don't know what he did with that mana though in the end step. We're now on to Jinhao's second turn here with another fetch land into what I have to assume is a swamp.
I think that might be an island. It's one of those secret layer ones, so it's very hard to tell.
They've really gone wild with the basic lands these days.
Jinhao definitely has blinged out his deck. I think it must have been a Thought Scale turn 1, really ramped out that Murktide region, and this is a fast one as well. So he's got it. It is only 4 power, so that 1 spell exile, which would have been Thought Scale, but it is definitely a quick start for him.
I'm interested to see how many... Was that only 1 instant sorcery exiled there?
Yeah, I think it was just that Thought Scale he would have played turn 1. So it's only a 4/4 at the moment, but definitely has the ability to grow with Psychic Frog.
I mean, that's a 4-turn clock if something was to happen like this Misty Rainforest in play, perhaps. So Nathan's turn 3, tapping the Emry, targeting Mox Opal in the graveyard. Emry giving you the ability to recast these artifacts from the graveyard. Sometimes they're ones that you put there, and sometimes they get there in other ways.
Yeah, definitely very strong. Also very good with Mishra's Bauble, so this will generate him... Won't generate him any mana just yet, but he has the potential to activate Saga. That'll turn the Mox Opal online. So a few options available to Nathan at instant speed.
Well, I mean, it's not like you were going to attack with the Emry that turn anyway, right?
No, definitely not. Definitely not into that Murktide.
Yeah, and the Tamiyo also being held back there. By a big silly drag.
Big benefit of landing that, stopping, I guess, the potential more clues coming down. And with the construct, that also benefits from having more artifacts. So, if Tamiyo got an extra attack in, that'd be an extra power for that construct token.
That's true. Nathan, he did not spend any of his mana on his turn, which means that he does have the ability to activate the Urza's Saga in the end step. If he decides to go for some sort of combat damage game plan here, or he may have something else in mind. Yeah,
it definitely, that's the sort of the really powerful part of this Grinding Breach deck. It can obviously win through the combo, but it's also got a strong fair game as well with Urza's Saga generating these really large construct tokens. Luckily, Jinhao has this Murktide which can potentially block early on, but as soon as you get more and more artifacts in, those constructs are going to get quite big.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, that's it. If you made a token here, and then move to the upkeep, made another token, and then let the final ability of the Urza's Saga resolve, you'd have 2 4/4s on the board.
Yeah, it presents quite a quick clock. Jinhao has shocked a bit, so those could represent a potential game-ending threat.
We see a fatal push here from Jinhao, just respecting the ability of Emry to perhaps recast that Grinding Station the next turn. I believe there was a Pithing Needle that was milled over as well.
Yeah, definitely. Emry's definitely one of the key cards you want to be able to hit. It is sometimes a bit awkward with Fatal Push because you need that Revolt. So he's utilizing that now while he's fetched, so he can kill that with the Fatal Push.
And the Murktide coming over, having its influence on the game, it felt, attacking with a 4/4 flyer on turn 3, and a Psychic Frog to follow up.
Yeah, that's a good 1-2 punch. With Psychic Frog, you can exile 3 cards from your graveyard, and they'll give Psychic Frog flying. But if there are any instants and sorceries in that pile of 3, that can potentially grow the Murktide region. So it's a good 1-2 punch with that deck. So it's it's good to see Jinhao has his 2 key cards there.
And we do see Nathan in the end step here making a construct. Let's see if we can get an idea of what's in hand. I think I see another Urza Saga in hand. So very heavy on the Urza Sagas this game, which may prove to be a problem with some large flying creatures coming across from the other side.
Yeah. It looks like he's utilized that Saga to activate to make another construct token before searching for another 1-drop. So we'll see what he finds.
Ether Spellbomb. Great answer to Murktide Regent. Great answer to any card with Delve, honestly.
Yeah, that's the sort of utility of this grinding breach deck. You're able to find any 1 or 0-drop artifact in your deck. He also has other options in Haywire Might, Soul Guide Lantern, but Ether Spellbomb should be quite handy dealing with this Murktide Regent.
Yeah, very cool to have access to, not just the 1 copy that you put in your main deck, but also 4 Urza Saga to dig out those one-ofs. One of these constructs can attack this turn, the other one cannot. I'm not certain how many cards are in Jinhao's hand here, whether it would be a safe attack into the Psychic Frog. You've always got to worry, is my opponent willing to just pitch their entire hand, go all in on this frog? Well, they're going to do it next turn anyway, you know?
He's brought over the clue token, so that might indicate that he's willing to attack with the Tamiyo, generate a clue token, make that construct a bit bigger as well. I believe currently it's at 5. So it could go up to 6 if he chooses to attack with the Tamiyo as well. And that looks like that's the play here.
Wow. And the Tamiyo has flying, so you would have to commit not only discarding a card, but also exiling those 3 cards from the graveyard if you wanted this Psychic Frog to deal with this Tamiyo.
Yeah, it's certainly a risky investment given that there is that Spell Bomb presented as a potential answer to Murktide Regent. So maybe one that Jinhao is a bit hesitant to make.
It's also worth noting here, Nathan, of course, tapped out of mana in the lands, but there is also this Mox Opal with certainly more than enough. Has the frog got reach?
I don't
believe that this frog can actually block this Tamiyo, right? Tamiyo's got flying straight up.
I think this is...
It looks like the players have just discovered that there. Cool.
Yeah, it is elusive, the Tamiyo. It does have flying, so it is quite hard to deal with, and it does generate those clue tokens.
All right, so Jinhao having another think about whether or not blocking here is an option. Do you have to worry about your own life total in this situation?
Somewhat, definitely. I mean, Jinhao is on 13, and that second construct, next turn potentially being 2 constructs attacking at you, it does represent a lot of damage, and I don't think Jinhao has enough damage to, to sort of present lethal at least next turn. And with that Spell Bomb being active, I guess, now and potentially next turn, it's a bit hard. So he does have a lot to think about here.
This is very interesting, sort of Nathan pressuring Jinhao into the block, which of course involves investing more cards from your graveyard, and then the Ether Spellbomb. Okay, going on the frog, not on the Murktide Regent.
So he must have thought this through very nicely. So he's discarded a few cards perhaps that aren't going to be too useful, like Counterspell, with all these permanents in play already. And he's committed to sort of using that frog to attempt to block the Tamiyo. However, now he's forced that Ether Spellbomb so that Murktide is safe, and now a bit larger too.
So that Murktide Regent now a 6/6, 2-turn clock. Of course, the Tamiyo could always block the Murktide Regent.
Very, very strong utility-wise.
We see a double-faced land there. I believe that's the other half of Sink into Stupor.
That is,
and a second Emery coming down. Milling over, what do we see? Mox Opal, Mox Amber, Mishra's Bauble, and Shifting Woodland.
Definitely what you want to be seeing, a lot of 0-drop artifacts. So if Nathan gets to untap, he has the option to play Mox Amber or that Mishra's Bauble.
I'm still surprised by the Spellbomb going on the frog rather than the Murktide Regent. Is the sort of immediate protecting your Tamiyo and getting one more turn of no frog coming in better than stopping the dragon entirely?
I guess Nathan has calculated that Murktide might not be enough damage. Jinhao would need to put 3 cards into the graveyard and have play that frog and exile all 3 spells for that to represent lethal. So I guess he's calculated that that's safe for now, and then he has that Tamiyo to block, as you mentioned earlier. So, and then he is the aggressor now with these constructs. So if he survives this turn, he's in a really good position.
This is super interesting to see this. We've been toting this deck as a big combo bad guy, but here it is, just attacking with constructs like any other person could do.
Yeah, it's. I think that's the strength of this, I suppose, combo deck. It is a very strong, fair deck.
So the frog coming back down. I believe Jinhao's down to 2 cards in hand now. And maybe this Murktide has to sit back on. I'll retract that statement. Murktide coming into the red zone, getting in for 6 damage. That card's not made to sit back and block.
No, definitely not. So he's got Nathan at 3. He probably has to think about, those fetches and whatnot. But he does have the offensive firepower with these constructs.
I believe we've seen 1 Fatal Push cast already. And I think maybe a second one was discarded to... No, it wasn't discarded to Frog. So there would still be 3 Fatal Pushes lurking in the graveyard here.
Yep. Yeah, Fatal Push is a great answer to these constructs. They have 0 converted mana cost.
Ooh, Emery recasting the Ether Spellbomb.
Yeah, that is that utility of Emery, as you were mentioning. Very powerful. He has a lot of options, certainly in his graveyard, and Spellbomb definitely a good one to get rid of that potential troublesome Murktide or the blocking Psychic Frog.
Is this a potentially lethal attack?
Yeah, if Jinhao has nothing, this could be lethal here.
Wow. Truly out of nowhere, I mean.
Yeah.
But Nathan choosing not to commit the Ether Spellbomb, just attacking, getting another clue for the troubles. That makes those tokens 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 5s?
And then they count themselves too, so it will be 7, I believe.
3, 4. Oh, you're right, yes.
Yeah, so
I didn't even count them, yeah.
Very lethal threats, and I think, he's decided to pop the Spellbomb now because it is, so that looks like it's game there.
Wow. What a finish. You could have actually seen a removal spell out of Jinhao there on one of the constructs. And then we would have still had a bit of a game on our hands. But alas, into the sideboarding.
Yeah, it's definitely, that's the power of that deck, right? The Emery really showing that value.
All right, so you're in the Dimir player's seat here. I'm going to rattle off some cards too that you might have access to in the sideboard.
Yeah.
Do you bring these in?
Yeah.
Mystical Dispute?
I don't think so. I think there's just a few more powerful cards. Some cards I'm looking at is potential Engineered Explosives. It's great at dealing with those constructs and a lot of the 0 mana Moxen that Nathan might have.
Harbinger of the Seas?
Yeah, definitely one to bring in. I think it synergizes very well with Unearth as well. You're able to bring that back and potentially get rid of Saga. Again, Saga was that sort of key card in that first game for Nathan.
Nihil Spellbomb?
Potentially, it's definitely, I think he has better options, but definitely one that's worth considering depending on what else he might remove from the main deck. The main deck generally for Dimir Murktide is fairly solid. It sometimes can get run over by that fair plan. So the Nile Spellbomb, it's okay, but not the most powerful. So if he has something else, he might prefer that.
What about, again, open deck list. You know your opponent's deck. You know that Nathan's win con here is generally a Thassa's Oracle. Do you board in Consigned to Memory?
I don't think so. Generally, when the Breach deck is comboing off, you have a lot of cards at your disposal, so you can recast the Oracle again and again. So it is very hard for you to win that way. So yeah, probably not, unfortunately.
Okay.
Yeah.
So looking over the other side, Nathan's sideboard here, we can see a Flame of Anur as a possibility, a Jace Wielder of Mysteries as a sort of second Oracle.
Yeah, I think he'll bring in some counter spells here. So the spell pieces and the spell stands I'm looking at. Jinhao's plan is sort of to disrupt with some counter spells, and his threats are the 2 drops in Psychic Frog. That's a key cog into that deck. So being able to counter that is quite beneficial. Swan Song is also another card I'm looking at, being able to counter an instant or sorcery. And potentially, I'm thinking maybe Stock Up. This is a new card from Aether Drift. And some people have referred to it as a bit of a dig through time, a mini dig through time. Able to look at that top 5 of your library and then put 2 of them into your hand. So you're able to, find some value cards, or you're able to find some, some combo pieces as well. So it's quite beneficial there. So I think I'd be looking at some counter spells just to protect your combo or your fair game as well. And I guess not let Jinhao get too much tempo on you.
Look, you say this card's, related to Dig Through Time. I'm a big fan of Dig Through Time, but I wouldn't see it as a sorcery personally.
No,
But
yeah.
I mean, these players know better than me, and that's why they're playing in these high-stakes competitive events, and I'm just at the commentary booth.
Yeah, it's definitely a card that's risen in popularity. I think we saw the evolution of this deck with some new cards in Ether Drift. Ketramos was putting some pressure onto the format, and then Stock Up was a card that, sort of gained some advantage, some strong advantages.
Yeah, and there's actually multiple different builds of Breach in the room. I know that there's this is certainly the more common 3-color variant, but I know that there's a couple of people playing the 4-color Breach deck as well, playing some white mana for Teferi, Time Raveler, and some sideboard options.
Yeah, Teferi's a classic, I guess, in Modern, stopping your opponents from casting anything at instant speed and being able to bounce any troublesome permanents as well. So, yeah, definitely a few good options there.
Would be great in this matchup.
Oh, most certainly, yeah. If Jinhao isn't able to cast any counter spells, then
that's right.
It's pretty brutal for him.
Bounce your Murktide, turn off your counter spells for the turn. Couldn't ask for much better than that. So 155 players here today means that we are playing 8 rounds of Swiss. These players are 3-0, the best start you could have, and they need to win a few more before they can start looking at their chances of making day 2.
Yeah, I think the magic number is probably 6. 6 to start off with, maybe 6 and a draw. But yeah, 6 or 7 would be that magic number needed for that potential top 8 or top 10 finish for the Pro Tour.
That's true. There is Pro Tour invites down to 10th place, passing out invites to Pro Tour Final Fantasy.
Should be a fun one.
It should be, yeah. And there's also some cash prizes, obviously provided by Wizards of the Coast here. And yeah, the Worlds invite for first place.
Yeah, plus a nice trophy.
That's true, yeah. James Moore, currently our Worlds 2025 competitor. And today we're going to see who's going to join him on the team. Looks like the players have finished their sideboarding, presenting ready for game 2 here. We'll see if we can get a glimpse of their 7s and see what they're working with. Maybe we can see some of their sideboarding.
Yeah, they'd definitely be hoping to draw some of those in their opening hand.
All right, 7 for both players here. I can't see much from Jinhao's hand there. For Nathan, I can see Underworld Breach, Pithing Needle, Ether Spellbomb, Grinding Station, Urza's Saga.
That's a very nice opening hand to have the 2 combo pieces in your hand. And
Emery and Mox Opal. So I think there's no coloured source in the hand other than Emery. But you could go turn 1, Saga 1-drop, turn 2, 1-drop Opal.
Yeah, potentially. It looks like Jinhao will take a mulligan. He hasn't seen maybe enough of his sideboard cards. So we'll see what he goes. I think Nathan's still mulling it over.
And interesting to note that none of those cards in Nathan's hand there are sideboard cards.
Yeah, the deck's very strong by itself, so
Yeah.
he's happy enough with them.
All right, so Jinhao, I can see here an Engineered Explosives and a Spell Snare. And the Spell Snare going on the bottom of the deck.
Yeah, perhaps not enough 2-drops that he wants to hit. It certainly hits the combo pieces, but perhaps those are cards that Nathan will play a bit later in the game. The other key card that it could potentially hit the Spell Snare is the Malevolent Rumble. That's the aforementioned, I suppose, cantrip that generates a lot of value.
Yeah, it replaces itself and also half of the mana as well at the same time. But also just stocking up that graveyard, super important for this this Breach deck, it seems. And we have turn 1, Ether Spellbomb and Mox Opal. Nathan choosing to play the Mox Opal rather than keep it in hand. Why would he be looking to do this?
I have to suspect he might think that will meet a counterspell. So he's trying to play it now, perhaps when Jinhao doesn't have enough mana for that. But yeah, otherwise, yeah, not too sure otherwise why else.
If I'm recalling correctly here, I don't think Nathan's got a second land in hand. Maybe stressed about a discard spell coming and nabbing the Mox Opal?
Yeah, potentially. So yeah, that essentially operates as a half land. It's almost active. It needs just one more artifact and then it's online and he can potentially cast that Emery in his hand.
And Emery doing, incredible work in this deck, fueling the graveyard. And we see a Thoughtseize surveilled away here, so Nathan perhaps choosing incorrectly.
Yeah, we'll see what Jinhao has.
if you're in Jinhao's seat, there's an engineered explosives in your hand. You could play it for 0.
Yep.
Okay, well, Jinhao choosing to play the frog.
Yeah, I think you want a bit more value with the E because you're casting it for 0, but then you have to activate it, so that does take away your turn. So I think he's looking for a bit more value. Perhaps Nathan's going to activate it, create some construct tokens, and he's trying to take those away.
Sure, that makes sense. Yeah, in the face of the onboard Urza Saga, and there's no shortage of other zero-cost permanents in this deck.
Definitely not.
See a pithing needle here. We'll see if we can hear what the player's name with this pithing needle, but I suspect it might just name the onboard frog.
Yeah, Frog has 2 activated abilities, so it does make the card a lot less efficient.
And we see here a gesture from Nathan that will name that card.
Yes, yeah. But being able to pitch a card in your hand like the Oculus or even the Harbinger and then unearth it can really save you on mana. So not having the ability to do that sort of really nerfs the Frog's abilities.
Yeah, just a 1/2 with reach. Sorry, not with reach. With the ability to draw cards when it hits a player.
Yep.
Still a super powerful card. You know, we've seen some Shadow Mage Infiltrator in the past, Luda Il Core. Truly hanging out with legendaries.
Yeah, definitely it's like the modern day version of those, I suppose. Has a few more keywords.
And a Tameo here as well. Important to note that Mox Opal is online and an Emery. So this is turn 2 for Nathan, and Nathan has played 5 spells and 2 lands.
Yeah, that is the power of this deck. He's played these 2 core blue creatures while also shutting down the opponent's Psychic Frog. And he's able to present Tameo or Emery as safe blockers for Psychic Frog now that it's been named with Pithing Needle.
So the Emery there, milling 4, hitting a land, a Flame of Anur, a Otawara, and a Mox Amber. Just the Mox Amber there as fuel for the Emery at the moment, sort of the ability to recast that. But if that was to come into play, that's a Mox Sapphire right there, ready to go.
Essentially, yeah, especially with the Tameo and the Emery he has to get rid of both of those in order to sort of turn that off. So at the moment, it's very active.
And we see Nathan very kindly writing frog on a slip of paper there for that pithing needle. No questions about what that's naming now.
Yeah, Jinhao has some decisions to make. He does have that E, but there are a few different converted mana costs in play at the moment. One is definitely the strongest with, Tameo, Spellbomb, and the Pithing Needle. But there's a consideration to be made for, potentially playing for 0 and hopefully hitting the Mox Amber if Nathan chooses to play it from the graveyard next turn and, at least take away some of that mana and any potential sagas that come down. But yeah, so definitely it's a bit hard for Jinhao here because he has to commit that mana to the explosives while sort of playing around what Nathan has as well. So Nathan has that flexibility there.
And Nathan has the ability to sort of, if you were in Jinhao's seat and you played this engineered explosives and didn't crack it, Nathan knows what value it's set to and can crack the Urza Saga for the correct card for the situation, right?
Yeah, he's at a bit of a sticky spot too because the Urza Saga could find something else that could potentially deal with the EE. So there's a lot of unknowns. It's a bit hard to be in Jinhao's seat here and sort of play against what you don't know.
I'm actually curious to see what Nathan's going to get with this Urza Saga. We already see access to Mox Opal, Mox Amber on the board, and we see the one of Pithing Needle, the one of Ether Spellbomb already out. So there's actually not that many cards left you could reasonably get. Is it just a Bauble?
It could be. Bauble plus Emery is a very solid draw engine, consistent value there, especially if Emery lives past this turn. So yeah, it's I guess the ball sort of in Jinhao's court where depending on what he does, Nathan can sort of play around that with the Saga.
All right, so we see a fetch land for Jinhao, cracking and casting this engineered explosives. X is 1, Sunburst is 1.
Definitely does get rid of a few permanents, and he can sort of hold that there on his turn and hold that until Nathan's end step, and then see.
Just choosing to go for it right now.
He will pop it straight away and get rid of 3 permanents. It's quite good value there.
Unlock that frog. Give me access to my creature. Let's get it going.
It's like it's connected, and Psychic Frog will sort of replenish his hand a little bit there.
Yeah, that's got to hurt if you're sitting in Nathan's seat right now.
And I think the benefit of that is that it also has shut off the Mox Opal for now, although it feels like that will be active very shortly. Yeah,
this Urza Saga finding 1 permanent, and the Emery, of course, can just recast either the Needle or... Is it the Needle you would recast this turn? Needle, Amber...
Yeah.
Well, it's not going to be Amber.
Yeah. So it looks like it could be the Needle, it could be the Spellbomb if he thinks the Frog is a bit annoying to deal with. But yeah, definitely he has a lot of options available to him.
And it looks like Nathan reconsidering the Mox Amber, perhaps realizing there's one in the graveyard. Does commit to.
Yeah.
So how many cards is Jinhao left with at this point? He hasn't really committed much to the board, nothing in the way of counter spells or removal spells other than this engineered explosives, right?
Yeah, so he still should have a few cards in hand, and that Psychic Frog is replenishing his hand. So I think if he gets to untap here, he might be in an okay position.
We see Grinding Station here coming down for Nathan. Sort of half of the namesake of the deck here.
Yeah, that does turn on the Mox Opal, and now he's able to tap that for mana. Looks like he's sacrificing the Mox Amber to the Grinding Station and milling 3 cards.
So that was Urza Saga Tamio, and Emery recasting the Mox Amber to cast Underworld Breach.
There is the Breach.
The other half of the name of the deck.
Yep. He does have the combo here, so he will be able to sacrifice that Mox Amber to mill 3 cards.
I'm curious how much of this we're going to see play out, or whether we will just be, whether Jinhao will make Nathan play it out, or whether we will have to pretend.
Yeah, he's demonstrating the loop here where, if you sacrifice the Mox Amber, he'll tap it for mana, and then he'll sacrifice it, so he'll have X amount of blue mana equal to the amount of 3, for every 3 cards in his library. He's going to be able to mill out his entire library.
So every activation here, mill 3 and then escape the Mox Amber. Choosing to leave Unholy Heat in the graveyard here.
Yep.
Choosing to leave spells, Swan Song in the graveyard here.
Yeah, now he's in a very good position because he's able to potentially flash back that that Swan Song as well to protect any counter spells that Jinhao probably would have played already. But it's looking pretty dire for Jinhao, unfortunately.
And all of this being fueled by, the Underworld Breach, you have to exile 3 cards from your graveyard.
Yep.
All of this being fueled by this Grinding Station to sacrifice that Mox Amber that you've just recast to put 3 cards back in your graveyard.
Yeah, and it untaps itself, so it is half an engine by itself. But yeah, these two have synergized very nicely. He's able to go through his entire deck and find his win con. So I think they're just going through the motions now. Nathan has to, exile 3 cards every time he recasts it, but I think he knows what he's looking for here.
And look, it's definitely absolutely fine in this sort of scenario to make your opponent play it out. We see a judge coming over here. It looks like perhaps Nathan revealed 4 cards instead of 3. We might pop back into the commentary booth here as the judges figure out what they're going to do to alleviate this.
Yeah, definitely a powerful deck as we're seeing in action. It's comboed through any potential counter spells that Jinhao had, so it is a very strong deck. And cards like Pithing Needle turning off your opponent's essentially best creature, very frustrating to play against, I imagine.
And 2 very different games so far.
Yeah, definitely.
Game 1, sort of the Urza Saga construct, attack you with a couple of 4/4s, 5/5s. And this game, it's you tapped all of your lands.
Yeah, he saw his window and he's able to combo off, so that's probably the strength of this deck.
All right, we look to be back down on the table here. In basically the same position we were before. They would have fixed up the error there.
Yeah, it seems like he's just going through the motions, sort of milling through his deck, looking for that Thassa's Oracle.
Looks like they're still sorting out what the fix here should be. Well, how much do you think a deck like this Grinding Breach, that's only really been in existence for a few weeks, that evolved from previous iterations, how much time do you think that these players have spent on playing this deck?
I have to imagine quite a bit. I think getting through the motions of, playing that fair game, but also that combo. And I think especially we might see some troublesome mirrors as well. So it seems like there's a few. And especially when you are the best deck, there's a lot of decks gunning for you. There'll be a lot of sideboard cards. We expect to see maybe some Stony Silences, some decks. Every deck will bring their best against Breach. So I think having to navigate through the hate, we're seeing some Nature's Claims that are in, the sideboard of these Breach decks. So they have to play around a few things. But definitely, There's pros and cons of being the best deck, I suppose. Everyone's after you, but you
Yeah.
have to play around all the hate.
You really put a target on your head. I think there's also some other players in the room that have made not just card choices, but deck choices, trying to find what is the deck with a positive matchup against this Breach deck.
Yeah, there's certainly a few here and there. I think potentially any deck with pest control is quite good against it. Being able to blow up, all the 0 and 1 mana artifacts as well is quite damaging against it. Although, clearly Breach has been able to, outmaneuver that as well. But I think any deck with pest control potentially has some game against Breach. But, Breach also has the combo element too, so it's never an easy matchup per se.
Yeah, it's rough. I've heard that some players are leaning on strategies like Amulet Titan, perhaps choosing to just, we're not going to interact in either direction. I'm not going to interact with what you're doing or the other way, and I'm one turn faster.
Yeah, I think that's certainly one way to beat it, just outrace it. And definitely Titan's a fast deck that has a lot of combo elements. I think that deck's evolved quite a bit now, I think with the Analyst and the potential Scape Shift combo now. So I've seen some crazy lines from that deck.
Yeah, a lot of cool stuff. A lot of things you can be doing in Modern at the moment, as long as you keep in mind this here Breach deck, as Nathan combos off, shows us more cards from his deck.
Yeah, so the dice are going to represent amount of blue mana he's able to generate off that Mox Amber, and that's sort of enabling that combo. So he will have, essentially, it will get added every time he mills 3 cards and exiles and casts that Mox Amber. So he's just demonstrating the loop, and he's just looking for Fast Oracle, although he has hit a Jace, which will also win him the game if his library is empty.
Is it safer, perhaps, to cast a Jace than a Thassa's Oracle? Are you playing around something like Force of Negation or Subtlety?
I think at this point, Nathan's has all the control in the world, so he could play both. So
I suppose you've got your own counter spells.
Yeah, it's very beneficial to have that, and that's why I think you bring in the sideboard counter spells as well. So if you are going off with Breach, it is very hard to lose from there.
Well, good to be able to pop down to the table there and see the conclusion of that game. That was round 4 for us here at Regional Championship number 8. I'm Jim Dowling. It's Kwang Wu. It's been a pleasure commentating these games so far, and we've still got 4 more rounds of Swiss and a top 8 that we'll be covering tomorrow. These players don't have to play out the top 8 today, which can give them a nice little break. After you spend 8 hours thinking, perhaps it's nice to rest a little bit.
Yeah, it'd be nice to go home and know that you have that top 8 locked up. So
That's right.
it would be nice to have that on the second day.
Well, that was round 4. Thanks for bearing with us, and we'll be back soon for round 5 here.
See you next round.